Hello friends, welcome to my new video. In this video, we are going to learn Ajax. So this is an advanced and very important concept of JavaScript, how we can implement Ajax. If you guys are beginner and you want to learn Ajax, this video is only for you. So as far as the theoretical concept is concerned, we are going to understand what is the theory behind that and how we can implement Ajax, and of course we are also going to learn why we need Ajax. In a real world example, other than the theoretical definition, I will show you the scenario where we need this Ajax concept. And if you follow my video from start to end, by the end of this video you will be able to understand the whole concept of Ajax technique. So basically, as far as the theory is concerned, Ajax is a phenomena, is a technique which we use in web technologies, in web development for asynchronous operations. So this is basically the theory of it. Now what is in real world example, why we need that? We can try that. We can see that if you see my screen, I have list of all the users which is being displayed on the page. All users data is listed on the page, and if you see the status column, there are statuses for each user, and these statuses are basically clickable. If we click on inactive, it will convert the status to active, and same thing will it happen for the second user also. And again, if I click on active, it will revert the status and make the status inactive again. So during this operation, if you notice on my screen, whenever I click on link, all the page reloads, connects database and return the data again. The data of all the users load all the time. I'm clicking again. Please notice that when I click that, you see here all page reloads. So since we have only two users, maybe it is fine for two users. It is not taking too much time. But if the number of user increases, suppose there is a scenario where we have 200 rows or 300 rows or something like that. So loading all the data of users all the time is not a good approach. It will definitely make the performance of page very bad. It will make the page load time too much, and also it will reduce the performance of page too. So here we need Ajax. With the help of Ajax, we will be able to update only the single part of HTML. If you see my screen, if I want to update the status of John, this user, when I click on inactive, only HTML and the data in this cell should be updated. All the rows, all the users data should not be affected and should not be reloaded. It will not reload the page once we implement the technique of Ajax. So this is the beauty. We can perform asynchronous operation. This cell will be updated and page will not reload. All the data data of users will stay the same. I hope you understand the concept of Ajax. So now let's implement that. Let's get to code. Before we begin coding, I want to mention, as always, I have uploaded my code on GitHub repository. As always, my all the videos code is uploaded there. You can just go to my GitHub handler. The link of that handler is given in video's description. You can just download that and implement that on your local machine and just try this Ajax technique with me. So let's begin. As you know, we are on users.php page. So I am going to open this file, user.php. First of all, we have to include the jQuery file. So what is jQuery? Basically, jQuery is the framework of JavaScript. This is the requirement. We need this jQuery to implement Ajax. From where we will get that link? It is simple. We will just go to Google and we will write jQuery CDN, and it will take us to that link. This is official jQuery site, and I am going to copy this minified version. So this will, I am copying that, and in this file I am going to paste this jQuery link. So now the jQuery is part of our project or application. right now it will not affect anything. All the data and all the page performance will stay the same, but there's just one thing: we have included jQuery, and this jQuery is doing nothing at this stage. It is doing nothing. Now we are going to make it work. We are going to work around with that. This is the first step, to include jQuery. Now the second thing is, here basically this line is written for displaying the status of all the user. What we are going to do, we are going to remove this href thing, and we are going to add number sign. Now we are going to include a click event, edit user. So basically this is a click event. Whenever we will click on status link, this function should be called edit user. And since we have defined added this function name, now we have to define and initialize this function also in our application. Here in the footer, before the footer, I am going to write a script tag, and in this script tag I will write the function edit user. So that's the name of function should be the same what we already have. To test this, that this function is connected to the on click event or not, we can test it. There's a very simple approach to test that. We are going to add alert box. So we have added alert box. Now when we reload this page, when I click on this link, it should open an alert box saying 1 2 3. If we see that alert box, that means that our function is connected. So let's click that. Here we go. It means our on click event is now bounded to this edit user function. Now we are going to make couple of other things in this function, and of course we are going to learn that. To do that, we are going to copy the Ajax syntax. We'll write Ajax in jQuery. So in Google, once we write it, it's gonna take us to a couple of links. I am going to open the first link. This is the second link. Maybe the W3 school site is very famous site, and it has lot of material for all technologies and for all level of programmers. I am going to open that. So we will open this W3 school site, and we'll just copy this link, copy this code, and we'll just paste this code here in our function, and we will make couple of changes. So first of all, we will bind this page to update status.php. We already have that file. If you download my code from GitHub, you will have that file already in your code. So now we need to pass couple of things. We need to pass some parameters to this PHP file, update status.php file. So that we need two parameters or true values for each user. Whenever we click on this user, we want two values. One is the ID of user, and the other value is the current status. If the current status of user is 1, then we are going to make it 0, because status can have two values. It could be active or inactive. It can have a 1 or 0, just two values this status can have. So we are going to pass two things, current status and the user ID, to that function. So before we pass that, we have to work around here, and we have to pass these values from this point. We will write here like status. Already we are getting that, and now here we will write user ID. So how we got these two values? These are already coming from here. So when we ran this query, these values are already part of this loop, and these values are already there. We have just passed these values. Since we have passed these two values, now we have to receive these values too, status and user ID. One thing is very important to understand: the order of parameter matters. If we pass status and user ID, then on receiving end, we should receive status and user ID in same order. If you see my screen, we have passed status and then user ID. So on receiving end, we will receive it also like this. If we switch these values like user ID and status, if we switch the order of values, then it will have the problem, because the status matters in passing the parameters. So now we have these values. Now I am going to pass these values to PHP file. How we can pass it? It is a simple thing. So of course you guys have to just understand the syntax and remember the syntax, but as far as passing the values to the PHP file, this syntax will stay the same for all kind of applications when we pass parameters to JavaScript, from JavaScript to PHP file. So now I am going to pass another parameter called user ID, and I am going to make it user_ID. So we have passed two parameters, status and user ID. So now when we get to that file, we are also receiving these two parameters. Instead of ID, we are passing user ID. So we will write it also user ID, and we'll change it here too. So we are passing two parameters here, we are receiving two parameters. From get statement, user ID and status we are receiving. So we are implementing some logical operations here. Since if we have passed 1 as a parameter for status, now in the database we are going to save the revert of it. We are going to save opposite value, because we want to change the status. Previous value was 1, now we want to change it to 0. So this is what it is happening. It is a small if else operation, ternary operator, and what it is doing, it is checking if status is 1, then it is making it 0, else part it is making it 1 again. So this is a simple operation, and result of these values are being stored in this variable, status variable. This is query to update the status based on this user ID. It will update the status. Now this is important thing to understand what is on line number 10. What this line number 10 is doing, it is basically redirecting the page, redirecting the control again to users.php. So that was happening before when I showed you example. All the data was being reloaded. Again, when this line executes, it redirects our page to users.php, and what that page does, that page updates all the value again. We do not want to redirect now. We just want to change this specific part of HTML, this specific part of this cell. We don't want to reload all this page. We don't want to reload that. So just because of that, I am going to remove this line, and I am going to add some if else condition here. If result, this is basically the result of this query. If result has successful values, then we are going to return this value, else part we are going to do vice versa. So if result has a successful value, I am going to save 1 in response. In other case, I am going to save 0 in response. So here I am going to print this value response. Printing this value means we are going to return the response to Ajax code, where we are calling this update_status.php file. So now we can see it. I'm going to remove this line. This line came from where we copied the code. So this is basically the result. When we hit this URL from Ajax, in response we will get the value in this result. So let's see what is coming in this value. If you notice, we are printing just response thing. This response can have two values, 1 or 0. So in our result operation, we can also get two values. It could be 1 or 0. If operation executes successfully, then we will have 1. If operation could not execute successfully, then we will have response 0. Now when I reload this page, there is a inspect element feature, very cool feature in Firefox. In Chrome too, we can have a console and inspect element. We can see the Ajax call in this tab. When I click on that, I should have one Ajax call triggered here. Let's see that. Here we go. We have one Ajax call, and we are passing two parameters, status and user ID. and in response we are getting 1 as a response. If you see my screen, we are getting this 1 value. It means it updated the database fine. Since it is updated, already updated database, but it did not change the HTML on our page. You see, when I click on that again, same thing stayed on this page. HTML is not updated, it did not change. Whenever the status is changed from database, this part of HTML should also update it. So now we are going to do this thing. We have connected to database, we have updated value in the database. Now we are going to change the HTML which is written here. We are not going to reload whole page, we are just going to update this small cell. To do that, we have to do a couple of things. In this user, basically for each cell, for each of these two cells, or it could be up to 100 or so on, all the cells, we should have some specific reference for all these values of the cell. Based on this reference, we can change the HTML, we can update the HTML. So how we can add a reference to each cell? Let's see that. If you see my screen, so this is basically a file, a line where we want to add reference. So in TD, I am going to add a class, and in this class I am going to add status, and in this status I am going to do something like that. So it will add class, but a dynamic class, because the status underscore will stay the same for all the values of class, but after the underscore there will be the ID of user. So this ID of user will be different for each user. John will have a separate ID, then the other user will have a separate ID. So this is how each cell will have a different identity, a different reference. So based on this reference, of course, we are going to change the value, but see what is the reference for each cell. We can see that in inspect element too. If you see here on inspect element, we have to reload page again after implementing the change. If you see the cell status underscore 1, now when we get to second cell, it should have status underscore 0, status underscore 2. So this is a different identity for each cell. So based on this identity, we are going to change the value. We are going to change the HTML, update the specific cell of this HTML. How we can do that? Let's see that. Once we get the response, we are going to add some if-else condition. If result is 1, then it means it updated the code fine. In other case, we are going to show alert message could not update status. So if it did update status fine, then we are going to write a little bit of code. So we have added these 3 lines of code here. I will explain what these lines are basically doing. So first of all, as you know, we are getting status already. After hitting the database, after changing the values in database, we have seen in PHP file also, we are going to revert this status. If the status is given as 1, we are going to make it 0. In else part, we are going to keep it 1. So this is the ternary small if operator, if else operation we are doing. If you want to learn more about that, you can just Google it, how we can use if else operation in this form. But it is important to learn on a beginner level that we can use if else in this form also. And also we are updating status and we are saving value in new status, and same thing we are doing for if new status is 1, then we want to change the syntax also, the text which is written here also. This is the text we want to update that too. If new status is 1, then we are going to display inactive. In else part, we are going to display active. So we have saved these 2 values in these 2 variables. Now we are going to write this line. This line will do all the magic. This is basically a syntax of jQuery. What we are doing here, this function, this line of code will search all the places where status underscore this user ID is given. If we click on this line, then it means user ID will be 1. and it will search for status underscore 1. In second user it will search status underscore 2. So it will go through all the page and search for that specific part of HTML. Once it searches that, then it will override the HTML which is written there with this new HTML we are writing here. So what we are writing here, we did not change anything basically. We have just added same function and we have given new values here. Before clicking that, the value was different. After clicking and updating the database operation, now we are going to display different values, like the status will be reverted. If already status was 1, now we are going to pass 0, because we have already changed that in database. Also user ID will stay the same, but the text of status will also update it. Now we are going to change display the different text based on the operation we have performed. Now let's see the operation of it. It's time to see the result. When we click on this link, it should update the status in the database, and also it should update this part of HTML. It should not reload all the page again. So let's see that. I'm clicking that. Here we go. It only updated this small cell. It did not reload all the page. If you notice here, it did not reload anything on this page other than updating this small cell. I'm clicking that again. Here we go. It just updated small thing which is written in this line, but it did not change all the value in the cell. So this is how we can implement Ajax. It have just with the help of Ajax we can update smaller section, small part of HTML in our application. We have no need to reload all the application and perform all the SQL operations again and again for all users. Since we are updating just one value for one user, so it is okay to just update the smaller section of HTML. This is the beauty of Ajax, and we have learned how we can implement that. So guys, stay tuned. There are a lot more programming smaller techniques coming up in my next videos. I will keep you posted. If you guys have any comments related to anything which we have learned here, please feel free to contact me. I will definitely reply you. Thank you so much. I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you.